We tried kind of to be short and to the point. We give a kind of a presentation on new findings at Shakespeare, drilling 2021-22 exploration potential. And after that, Dave King, our senior vice president, will introduce an overview on the new acquisition on the Denison project. Yeah, it's yes. Okay. Yeah, perfect. Yeah. So the presentation will be two parts. First one is 2021-22 Shakespeare drilling results, new understanding of the deposit and exploration potential, and second part of the presentation will be an overview on recently occurred Denison project and also exploration potential. Magna mining is new and pretty aggressive. Dedicated in making happen. In terms of the diamond drilling, first we start to give an idea, but pretty much everybody in the room knows the location of Shakespeare project. People are from Sudbury. It's located 120, it's about 70 kilometers southwest of Sudbury and north of Trans-Canada Highway. The access is all year long, like if it's winter, summer, or spring, you can drive to the project. And then the most recently acquisition is Denison mine, Green Hill mine. Denison project is half an hour from Sudbury to the west. Dive into a bit the Shakespeare itself location. Shakespeare is, as we said, like it's close 70 kilometers west of Sudbury town, and this map shows Superior Province. We have one north, and we have Southern Province here. And the Greenville. Sudbury, like Shakespeare itself, is the northern part of Southern Province. It's kind of close to the boundary with Superior Province and adjacent to Agnew Lake and Truden on the east side, there the way people translate it. One of the things is that Shakespeare is kind of, you should check carefully location of it. If you draw a line, so the Sudbury Basin itself lines up pretty good with the actual plane of elliptic shape of the Sudbury Basin. So it is definitely like what we see is this location of it pretty much in contact with two sub-provinces here. What really triggered most likely is the children. In terms of potential, property itself, we have pretty large packages, 180 kilometers square, is 30 kilometers from west to east. And one thing is it's a lot of target there, like it's for exploration. It's there, pretty much all of them are underexplored. The main focus was on the Shakespeare, which is western side of the property. Main targets are kind of the nickel, copper, platinum, palladium, and also there's a dust of copper, cobalt, and silver. What really you see that is there's no shortage of targets, and we're pretty much all shallow targets, but they're deep rooted system, magmatic system, probably that feeding it. And focus on Shakespeare, and Shakespeare itself is not really explored at full capacity. It's 1.7 kilometers right, and about 120 meters on depth, and it's open. To dive a bit more, Yeah. Yeah.
Is that one?
No, that's next one, yeah, perfect, yeah. Up next, yeah. Perfect, you're, yeah. Sorry about that, yeah, it's just, this. I don't know. Yeah, that's.
Is this
Yeah, that's one, yeah. So, sorry about that, it's just technical. So this one shows you like a real view of Shakespeare. We have east and west east mined out. That historical mining you mined out about 490,000 tons open pit at 0.33 nickel, 0.38 copper, 0.72 gram per ton of precious metal. One thing is this one shows that the grade is pretty consistent with the resource that we have. So the potential of it, open pit in the resources indicated, we have about 60 million tons plus at 0.34 nickel, 0.36 copper, and pretty much 0.82 grams per ton of precious metal. So we see the grade of this mine from the pit reconciles pretty well with the resource grade, so the confidence level is pretty high. Overall, in the resources, if you combine them, we have 20 million tons plus in resources, and then in indicated, and you have 2.5, 2.6 million tons of inferred. So there's significant volume of resources to be mined. And on this one here is the drilling results from 21, 2022 are not included into resource estimate. So really potential is pretty significant there. And then every year probably grow as we drill. Slides. Yeah. This is just a slide just to give you kind of a flavor of type of mineralization we have at Shakespeare. You see the first one is a black mineralization. We see on the angular side of the intrusion, and then get into more net texture as this mostly we see sometimes on fabric as the rocks like kind of deform, and then those blacks start to connect each other, giving net texture mineralization in the rock, which is a bit better grade. And also we have disseminated sulfides. The other type of mineralization that we recognize that Shakespeare was remobilization, valence, like fracture filling. And one of the things is like I want to mention on this slide here is this fourth type of mineralization is quite promising. That in the past was kind of wasn't really highlighted, but what we see like is this one probably, if you understand a bit more structural control for sure, if you understand the structures, probably be able to find much better grade of that at Shakespeare. And one of the sections is this one here, diamond level holes for the two. We show the axis on the next slide. This is quite promising. And then what I see that this probably that kind of mineralization is the latest phase of deformation of Shakespeare. Latest event that happened give rise to this structural control mineralization is better grade, better high grade, and then it's kind of controlled, more massive subjects. Next slide, please. So this is a longitudinal section. It shows diamond drilling in 2021. We did quite a bit of 4,760 meters of drilling was completed in 2021. And main focus was on the west side. The purpose of that was to see if the east zone was connected to the west zone through the gap zone, this except to the tackle gap. And all drilling that we had across in this area was really very significant, like it, and shows continuity, like the gap zone between east and west doesn't exist in this area here. And intersection that we have, all of them, like in terms of the width, they go between 10 meters up to 50 meters width, decent width mineable. and the resource grades. Here you have a kind of summary of the drilling, but what kind of the most important was all 25 that we had at the 52-meter intersection at 0.41 nickel, 0.54 copper, and 1.2 grams per ton of precious metal. So drilling was very, very promising, and definitely like this drilling here shows that east zone, west zones are connected. There is continuity, and all holes that we drilled pretty much we got it. And based on that, we kind of did some geological work, some interpretation, doing some new geological models, and propose some more drilling in 2022, which is next slide, please. So this one here, you can see that area that this is 22 now and drilling here, and then 22 was kind of stepping down deep extension of that, and then also targeting around S13. It was a little zone there, kind of isolated. Like at that time, we were able to put it. Is that connected? This one is on its own. So this drilling that we've done in 2022 is quite a bit of drilling. So it's 3,800 meters or drilled, and was done in 2 phases just to make sure that we kind of understand the geology and then spend the money wisely intersecting those holes. We had the first phase of drilling with 2,000 meters, and the second one 1,700. First phase of drilling, we had the results back. Very encouraging. Very encouraging. We get pretty much same width as 2201 drilling, 18 meters, 21 meters there, like Mynyr Hoxha, and then pretty much all those have resource grades. So one of the things that this drilling, like kind of combination was between 2021 and 2022. What we've seen is at depth, we start seeing quite a bit of change of deep direction of the mineralization. Something like previously was believed like the ore deposit goes to the north, and actually, based on the historical data, looks like the Shakespeare gabbro, which is kind of close to the mineralization of depth, is getting pinching out. But new drilling shows the opposite way. Like the Shakespeare gabbro kind of are wider, and then mineralization changed the direction to the south. Now the whole 42 that we drilled, that was really something, a game changer for us. On the footwall of nickel, we had about 0.5 meters intersection was 15.5 grams of platinum, and 1.46 was palladium, and 1.45 of gold. So over 18 grams of precious metal. That this kind of mineralization was the first time ever intersected at Shakespeare. And the location of it and the structural control of it, that shows like this could be something really potential to find better high grade on the footwall side. Now we know that the remobilization or the mineralization going through factors and then sometimes picking up the precious metal from the disseminated sulfide, but the amount of precious metal in that intersection is very hard to believe that it's coming from the leaching from the disseminated sulfide. That would be a source that is much higher grade at depth that we kind of have to understand and targeting for the years to come. So it's very, very, very promising drilling in 2020 and 2022. And the other thing that we see mostly like is drilling like this area here. Now the zones are connected, and then there is entire area is open for more exploration on depth. Next slide, please. So that's kind of a section like based toward like when you see the change to deep direction. So that's typical section that we have. The mineralization, Miller's gabbro, we have Nipsing gabbro on the kind of footwall side is considered here, but now kind of is overturning a little bit. And then we have a Shakespeare gabbro, so it's pretty narrow, and then go at the depth is opening up. We drilled this hole here, it didn't hit sediments at all, like so it's all this is quartz gabbro and then some Miller gabbro in this area here. So it's this, and then sediments coming, steep dipping and curving to the north, but the intrusion itself is going to the south. Now, if we zoom inside, really the interesting is last year drilling, we drilled hole 29 and 30, and both of them got pretty decent mineralization. Actually, it's between 15 and 20 meters per second. And what you see, like, is dipping to the north, steep dipping, and you get hole 42 that we drilled, kind of get shallower, and then you have hole 43, and then we also have hole 45. So really, it does that. The geometry is changing, like it's kind of north, steep, and then going to the south. And this intersection that we're saying, like this pretty high grade of precious metal, that's kind of intersection we see here. It's controlled by this tiny structure here, dipping kind of to the south. And the grade of that is 18.22 grams per ton of precious metal. And one thing is, I said, like it's just in the foothold of the nickel deposit, we have the highest grade ever intersected at Shakespeare. And the mineralization change. What really is interesting with this one here is you have this different pulses of magma, this amphibole rich gabbro, and then you have Nipsing gabbro, you have Shakespeare gabbros, and then you have the mineralization. Now, the mineralization itself seems to be controlled. This is definitely a separate pulse mineral gabbro going through. But what really is kind of in contact between the Nipsing gabbro and Shakespeare gabbro. And it seems to be controlled by predefined structure like was before, that full weakness zone, because now, as you can see, kind of to the south, going through the unit on the south side. And it's open, like if that's to give you an idea, the black mineralization and then disseminated sulfides in hole 42, and then this veinlet kind of fracture filling of high grade to the rock, like going for the high grade precious metal. And this section is roughly, giving an idea, it's on the west side of the deposit. That's west pit. That's the line going across here. Like, so the geological model, what do we learn? What does it mean for us going forward? Like, what's the excitement about that? So that's on the left. That's the past geological model. Pretty simple. You know, it's kind of cake layers, like you have pyroxenite, Nipsing gabbro, and then there's a kind of diamonds back here, and then you get into this Mynyr gabbro here with disseminated sulfide and blebby mineralization here. And as you go further to the angular side, you have quartz gabbro and then biotite quartz gabbro, and then you hit the sediments, the Ionian sediments, exactly that. So 45 to 80 degrees deep to the north. Now, based on this pretty much, this section is somewhere here on the log section. Now, new data that we have from drilling, new geological model shows like actually this dipping to the north section that we have here is pretty shallow. As you go up, as you drill a bit at depth, it's pretty steep dipping, and then as you get around 200 meters below the surface, really start curving to the south. There's a change, major change in big direction. And now this one here, that's very important because this is open a lot of ground for exploration, like this on that. And the events, if you check like how, like what is controlling the control of the mineralization, like why is that? What is controlling it? Still is believe that it's multi-pulse intrusion. It's nothing new there. It's you have sediments both sides, and then you have first phase is amphibole rich gabbro going through, and then you have this Nipsing gabbro, you have Shakespeare, and after that this sediment on the other side, the angular side, and sometimes between foothold side. And then the other event that happened was after the mineralization with that was like it's going like flat and then following that. And then you have the pseudo-tachyte. Now, in terms of timing, Nipsey Gabber is 2.2 billion years old. And the latest one that we have, that the event that happened to Tucker, going to be much younger than that, because it cuts everything in the end of the rock, like just the relationship between rocks. And what really this one is what do I see now, this pseudo-tacolite is very understanding the geometry of it. That could be a plumbing system for the better grade, high grade at depth. And you can see one thing is this one is pretty kind of obvious. See the mineralization is still dipping, so tacolite still dipping. Start to shallow, and then this start to shallow the tacolite. So that's a weakness zone, and most likely this phase, this event, geological event that happened, that was responsible for gap zone, this fracture zone up there, and also this high-grade mineralization through the fracture. So understanding that, probably be able to tackle down like where is the plumbing system like that, and that probably can give some clues, like maybe getting closer to the feeder. So if you go on the longitudinal section, what's the meaning of that now? This is that if you see it about 200 meters from surface, this is about section, like change the direction. Now on the longitudinal section, that's the model you have here exists on this on the west side, and this section here applies only for this area. Now also there is a bit of evidence now, like this hinge where it will really change the direction from steep dipping down to the south. There is looks like there's a very shallow plunge to the east. So if that's the case, I mean, it will be more work to be done to really fully understand it. But if that's the case, this area here now underneath is completely unexplored. And the drilling that was done from the north side, sometimes you miss it because going underneath it. So really you have to come on the other side to drill. So as you go further in, like this point here, somewhere there, is plunging down here. So this area, even on the east or deposit, this model probably, this new model will be applied to that and open a lot of ground for exploration like at depth. And which is really for us again, is not the disseminated sulfide. That's probably the upper portion. What we really are looking for is the way I see it now, my personal like is as a geology group, like mostly keen to the pseudo-tacolite here. That's event like it's really moving, the rock was moving. And then when that happened, most likely looking for some deposits like pre-event, previous pseudo-tacolite or dormant at that. And then also I'm wondering that that's the pseudo-tacolite, maybe they're related to Sudbury and Sudbury Basin. That's why it's one thing is that if you check the very first slide, you have Shakespeare online with the actual plane of liquid Sudbury Basin. And then when Sudbury event happened, it could have been all deposited at depth like pre-existing at the time, and you know, like in magma chambers, you have, because of gravity, like the rule of law, like gravity, the heavy stuff is at the bottom and you get more disseminated at the top. So what you see now at Shakespeare were pretty shallow actually, a couple hundred meters down, like from surface. And then this high grade could be at depth. And then this event happened, was injected into the country rocks, remobilized, and the potential to find much higher grade at depth. And this hole, like 42, this intersection, more than half an ounce of precious metal, 0.9% copper, is 3 times the reduced grade of copper. The reduced is at 0.3, you got 0.9. Precious metal, they are like 10, 20 times more like this. It's never seen like, and then I don't really believe like this high grade of platinum was just reaching from the main sulfides, because it's too much. Like it would be very hard to mass balance the disseminated sulfide to say that that's part of it. So got to be a more deposit of depth, which is much higher grade than what we have at Shakespeare. So next slide. So really take with this, what do you learn from drilling? 2021, 22 drilling. was this was very significant help to understand the geology, to build geological model, the geometry and the orientation of the mineralization, and what's controlled the mineralization. Now we can see that it's not really like it's like gabbro, quite gabbro, but really high grade is associated with most kind of practical mineralization or demobilization, and those are high grade, like potential work zones that we're looking at depth. And again, that was very successful and opened a completely new area for follow-up exploration to the south and the west of the deposit, because now it's changing the geometry. It's not that like it's just to the south, which means that the few holes that they are drilled from the north side probably missed the deposit. So that opened up a lot of potential for exploration at depth and to the south. And then the other thing is really kind of this, the most important is the high grade precious metal intersection of this intersection of the footwall. Could you have another footwall deposit, because this flat dipping structure, as you go further to the south, it should start getting thicker, and then rule of law, like heavy stuff always at the bottom, and then the temperature related, you know, you have nickel and then could be some pressure metal on the footwall side of it. So that is something that first time we intersected, and it is open for exploration. And then of this, like this is bottom line, which is just the mineralization direction of it. The way it goes now, this could potentially lead to the south to the feeder system that feed it entire not intrusion itself, but the mineralization. Miller's Gobble, because there we say are multiple intrusion, and that's nothing new as you said, but what really is this fault that minerate. And on that, like you have disseminated sulfide, you gotta be at down at depth some more high mineralization. Pretty much that's it for Shakespeare. If you have any questions, probably address them after or the next slide. And now I'll pass it to Dave because the Denison mine, and it's more exciting thing that's happening for Magna.
Thanks. Yeah, so as Mynyr said, I'm excited to be here and talk a little about the acquisition of the Denison project, which is really the historic Green Hill mine. I know myself and Jason a lot longer than myself have been working on that transaction for more than a year now. So I think the deal finally closed 8 days ago, and I'm excited to say we've had a drill turning for 7 days now. So it's going to be an exciting project for me. So just, I'm sure almost everybody in the room, or everybody in the room is sort of aware of where the historic Green Hill mine is, but just for everybody's sake, I'll just point it out. So the Green Hill mine, historic mine along the SIC contact on the south range of the SIC. I guess the closest neighbors would be the historic Victoria contact deposits, Lockerbie, and then Creighton off on the south range here. I guess next slide. So that's more or less just a location of the mine site. Oop, sorry, Kylie, is that me doing that? I'll let you do the slide events. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, acquired the property a week ago. A couple of days after that, we put out the initial resource estimate for what's left at Green Hill. And really, that's a combination of remnant mineralization, extensions of new zones, and new mineralization that was actually discovered by the joint venture between Lonmin and Vale over the past 15 or so years. So the mine closed in 2002, past producer of more than 20 million tons at about 1.3 nickel, 1.1 copper, and about 1.5 grams PGEs. In 2003, there was a joint venture entered into with Lonmin and Vale to explore for low sulfide, high PGE mineralization at Green Hill. the structure of the deal was focused on low sulfide, high PG, and not on typical sort of high sulfide nickel contact mineralization. So, you know, of the 90,000 meters that was drilled over that period up to 2018, none of it was really focused on any of the contact style mineralization, and all was focused on the low sulfide mineralization. And then Longman Canada in 2018 acquired 100% of that property from Valet. That's the essentially the acquisition that when we picked it up. It's 100% of the property for any commodities, not just the low sulfide PG rich material, but also the contact copper nickel mineralization. So the resource that we just put out last week, like I said, it's a combination of contact copper nickel style, low PG, remnant and remnant mineralization and extensions of the known zones. Also some new mineralization that was discovered during the JV period, and presented as a combination of open pittable or potential open pittable resource and underground resource. So just over 16 million tons in the open pit resource at a 0.3 nickel equivalent cutoff, at around about 0.5% nickel, 0.5% copper, and just over a gram PGs. And then the underground resource is stated at 1.1 nickel equivalent, and just under 15 million tons at right around 1% nickel, 0.8 copper, and about 2.5 grams of PGs. Part of the reason the PG tenor team is a bit higher in the underground portion is because that was the focus of the drilling over the past several years, and the lower sulfide, higher PG mineralization is incorporated into that resource. Next one, please. Just a little bit of detail on some of the areas that were successful over the past couple of years, or the past 15-ish years of exploration and drilling at Green Hill. One of the areas that the drilling had focused on was called the 9400 zone, which was a typical contact copper nickel rich area, historically mined near surface down to about the 1,000-foot level. However, during the period Longman was exploring at Valet and Longman, they did discover a lower grade or a lower sulfide, higher PG component to that resource as you go deeper. And that contributes on the underground portion there, just over 1 million tons of 0.5% nickel copper, but about 6.5 grams per ton PGEs, as opposed to the open pittable area nearer surface, which is more typical of contact style mineralization with lower PG. Next one. The other area that we've been looking at and was a bit of a focus for some of the drilling is called the 101 zone, and it's actually well, you see it in some of the later slides, but it's an area of mineralization that comes off of the SIC contact, kind of striking out of the page that you see there. So it's a little bit different orientation than some of the other zones. Higher nickel, higher copper grades, but doesn't seem to have the enriched PGs that we see in the 9400 or some of the other zones. And another component of the current resource is the 109 footwall zone. So this is an area that Longman had focused a lot of their drilling and a lot of their attention on. There's an area behind the main historically mined main ore body, which is a typical embayment structure you see along the SIC, but there is a high grade or a high PG component in the sort of keel area in behind that, the historic mining. Tons in grade there, a couple million tons in the open pit resource at almost 3 grams per ton, and in the underground component, a little higher grade copper nickel and also just over 3 grams per ton PGs. So that's just a few of the resources. I didn't go into any of the detail on some of the historic contact remnants and whatnot. This slide just shows some of the, I guess, some of the drilling that Longman had done near surface and just examples of some of the grades and intersection widths. So still some pretty significant mineralization left on the contact as well. You know, you can get widths of up to 150 feet, or they're not true widths, mind you, downhole widths. But pretty typical contact style mineralization, 1.5% copper, a couple % nickel, and generally less than a gram per ton PG. But still a significant component of the current resource estimate. Lonmin's drilling was focused relatively close to surface, probably above about the 2,000 foot level. And then I just have a couple of historic drill holes as examples of mineralization below. Next. Okay, and as I said, one of the focuses of Lonmin's exploration was exploring for the high PG material. And one of the areas that had a fair bit of success is what's called the 109 footwall zone. So immediately behind the main embayment area, they were successful in, relatively low sulfide, lower copper PG grades, but relatively significant PGs over some pretty good widths. So that seems to, or has been well drilled down to about 1,200 feet below surface. At which point, I think it was just getting a little deep to target that zone from surface, and that's essentially the end of the drilling that was done on that zone. So good potential to expand on that. So one of the closest neighbors, maybe not, and maybe an area that has some similarities to Green Hill is the Creighton deposit. Maybe not in order of magnitude of size, but I'd like to think maybe Green Hill could get there someday. But some of the trends and structures that we see at Creighton might be applicable at Green Hill as well. One of which is just the geometry of the main embayment structure. So the Creighton trough is the main ore body along the Creighton trough, but it also has these secondary structures that tend to host the mineralization or concentrate the mineralization along the contact as well. So this is just a view of the SIC looking down on the left, and then all drill hole intersections better than 2% copper plus nickel. So you can see the mineralization is obviously concentrated in the embayment structures. Generally two distinct trends that you see, and where they join together tends to be a bit of a higher grade area as well. If the same view of the Green Hill area, I think we see the same trends, same directions, and similar orientations. Likely some of the same processes or same controls on mineralization that control the trends in the different embayment structures. So at Green Hill, we've got the main embayment. There also seem to be these secondary embayment structures with similar orientations developed as well. So on the left, just same idea, view of the SIC contact looking down, all intersections better than 1.1 nickel equivalent over greater than 10 feet. And then the same idea here, but they're just colored by copper grade. So the brighter cyan color are the highest grade copper zone. So that's the view looking from above. If we look at the same view from below, next slide. Which are some of the features you see. Obviously, it's the same trends you see on the main embayments. But what you do see is the copper tenors tend to increase towards the back of the embayment. So higher grade copper as you go further away or further into the main embayment structure. That 109 footwall zone would sit right in behind here. You can see there's some lower grade copper there as well, and that's essentially the spine of that low sulfide IPG mineralization in the 109 footwall zone. And you see a similar trend on the 9400 zone where Lonmin had done the drilling here as well. So you go from, I guess, typical contact style into higher grade copper, and then furthest out of the page at us towards us is lower grade copper with high PG values. Next. I guess one of the other similarities with Creighton I wanted to sort of point out is there's a pretty strong structural control on some of the mineralization at Creighton. And they tend to be northeast, southwest structures that cross-cut the SIC contact, and can host some of the higher grade or more significant ore bodies. So, main contact of the SIC, and then structures that cross-cut at an angle, and you can follow some of these structures and have significant mineralization. Like it's well away from the main SIC contact at the back end of these keel structures in the embayment. So such as the 126 or one. Next slide. So similarly at Green Hill, I think we see that same family of structures, and I think they have, probably just as much or just as important controls on the mineralization at Green Hill. I'm just showing the, again, all the intersections better than 1.1 nickel equivalent or better than 10 feet, and just colored by copper grade on the top, and then by PG grade on the bottom. The highest grades are the cyan colors, just to make that sort of pop on the screen. But we see the same orientations and structures, and where those cross cut the main SIC contact, which is going up this way, we get mineralization coming back into the footwall, which tends to be higher copper grade and definitely higher PG grade. Any of the intersections that make that copper or nickel equivalent grade on the top that you see with copper grades, any that are grade down below don't have PG values. So, although this would be the 109 footwall zone at surface, at depth, you do get really increased and higher grade copper, not the PG values, simply because they weren't assayed for at the time. So, good potential to find some of the high PG mineralization on that depth as well. Some of the old mapping that we've been looking through over the past several months suggests the same idea. Where you've got the main SIC contact, the main embayment structure, and at that sort of 40-degree orientation, structures coming off the back of the main embayment that look like they're carrying, well, they are in a lot of cases carrying high PGs. Sometimes there's no PG value, but you can probably assume that the PG tenor is increasing along that structure. And typically these wouldn't have been followed up underground. This is from about the 3,100 foot level. The copper and nickel grades at the time would have been of what were of interest, and probably wouldn't have been followed up at all with any drilling to see if that structure continues. Maybe something similar to the 126 ore body at Creighton, where you can have a structure that's not necessarily mineralized throughout, but can lead you to other mineralization in the footwall. That's just another level plan, 50 feet below, which shows a similar situation where the main ore bar or the main SIC contact and the main deposit would have been mined out here. But we see structures running off in the northeast southwest direction, which in this case have super high PG grade, but lower copper, lower nickel definitely, and less copper as well. So that's some of the interesting stuff at depth that we'll be following up in the future. This is just a shot of, again, the SIC contact with the better than 1.1 nickel equivalent intersection. On the left, colored by copper grade, and then again on the right, colored by PG. So you can see the 109 footwall zone again, high copper and high PGs. Same idea in the 9400 zone, but where we have the high copper zone at depth between about the 1500 foot level and the 3500 foot level. Lots of high grade copper back end of the embayment. We don't have the PG data to identify what might be a IPG system coming off of the back of depth. Next slide. So this is just a similar view, looking kind of a composite sectional view. So we're looking along the SIC contact, just sort of main mass SIC would be to the left of the page, and then footwall to the right. On the left, I'm just showing copper grades, and on the right hand side, I'm showing TPM grades. So same idea where you get towards the back of the embayment structure, copper is increasing, PGs are increasing in the 109 footwall zone. As you go deeper, there's a bit of a change in the orientation of the SIC contact, and a bit of it looks like kind of a bulge coming back into the footwall. Increasing copper grades, but we don't have the data to show whether or not these are increasing in PGs, which I suspect they are. So, I think there's good potential for what we see at surface, where you've got mineralization coming back into the footwall a bit. Really high potential to look for something back in the footwall behind the main part of the ore body at depth at around the 3,000. So that's some of the things we're going to try and follow up in the coming year, and some of the exploration targets we'll be looking at. Just a plan view sort of showing a similar thing, the three areas that we're most focused on looking and trying to identify if we can find exploration for footwall targets in the footwall. Coming off the 9400 zone on the left-hand side, you could take that zone of increased PGs. Similarly, in the 101 area, it doesn't look from the drilling that necessarily have the high PGs, but those structures could continue on back out into the footwall and presumably have increased PG values as well. And then the 109 footwall zone, which is the focus of most of the Longman JV. Next slide. So the next steps for Longman, as I said, a day after the transaction closed, we mobilized a drill rig to site. We've got about a 2,000 meter program of drilling planned for this year. Early on, most of that drilling is targeted on some of the known mineralization that we've identified as potential bulk sample or underground advanced exploration target areas. So really just kind of proving up to ourselves that those still exist. According to the 3D models of historic mining and stoping, they do, but we want to make sure that they actually do before we initiate any underground development or advanced exploration programs. Probably in the coming year or early in the coming year, we'll start looking at more exploration style drilling and looking for extensions of some of the known zones into the footwall or potentially new zones. And some of the drilling we're doing this year will also be focused on advancing any data that we need for a PEA or a preliminary economic assessment study we'll do in the future. So if there's any gaps in the data that we need to fill for metallurgical or ore sorting or that kind of thing, we'll collect some material for that. So the second part of what we intend to do relatively soon is commission a PEA. That will look at the Green Hill mine on its own and look at the economics. Hopefully a document that we can use to demonstrate the economics as we go forward. Also, one of the main goals for us is to get a better idea of what, we've got a fairly large resource, almost 30 million tons, but to give us a better feel for what's the potential mineability of that resource. So, how much of it, how much of that, or what does that look like when you put a mine plan to it, the mine shapes to it, and what's the potential tons of weight of the reserve. So that's what we plan on doing in the coming years. It'll be a pretty busy year for us, but pretty exciting for us as well. So, yeah, that's all I had today. If there's any questions for myself or Mynyr?
Yeah, question about Shakespeare. Is the Shakespeare intrusion, is it conformal with the sediments generally, or is it and the whole package is still tilted up?
I'll let Mynyr answer that one.
What do you see like this? It's not really following that sediment itself. It comes in, and you see some fragments of sediments into the Shakespeare with rock. So this contact is not really like you can put it in the pencil like just maybe come up as intrusion. But the one thing is like I strongly believe now, more I've seen, I've been working on that project for 1 year and a half almost, and more. And the rocks, like to me, like this, like one thing is what I learned for 30 years. Rocks, like they tell the true story. Period of that. If you read them properly, understand them, I'm very sure like there's no way that we can miss that big ore deposit we're looking for. So to come back to what's the relationship of the Shakespeare itself. This contact is not kind of sharp. You can call it just got into that sediments. Now, one thing is it looks like it's pretty obvious like this. The way you see, we did some mapping this summer. Looks like west side of the deposit is much more dynamic. You see a lot of pseudo-tackle, we call them, but very similar. If you go there, like some Sudbury Breakthrough, they're not really Sudbury Breakthrough, very similar to that. And then also on the west side, you see this kind of dome, like those shaft structures. It's not anticline syncline, but something like it's three-dimensional, kind of something pushing underneath. And most likely that this source that was injected from the west to the east along the actual plane, those mega structures, the walls. So it's quite dynamic, like it's not sharp contact, it's broken, and you see the fragments of sediments into the Shakespeare castle.
But is it generally conformable? The nipis is usually conformable with the human sediments. Is it generally the same?
Like on the nipissing, that what you call their amphibole gavel, so far I've seen it's pretty kind of quiet there, like it doesn't looks like it's pretty folded up, but on the angular side, the shear zone on surface, as you go at depth, is pretty broken up. And you see this are that's why kind of those pseudo-tacklite or that gap zone, what we call, that's kind of is broken up because of some dynamics. And then that's why always I'm getting this plumbing system, really to have this kind of ore deposit, what they're looking for, but we didn't find it, like it's because we are too shallow. It's this plumbing system, which means that this is defined by those pseudo-tacklite, like broken rock, and which will goes. And then drilling, that's why the model now new one is quite different from obvious previously. So dipping only to the north and kind of pinching down, but it's the other round. I don't answer the question, but it's not sharp contact.
And then staying with Shakespeare first, any geophysics that you physics, ground,
There is like quite a bit, yeah, like we quite a bit of geophysics. Like it's interesting enough. Like some of them on this side, there's quite a bit of response. Like I can comment on that. It's a pretty good response. Like the place just lines up with our body. On the west side, we have, and actually, if you check the holes geophysically done, we have pretty good grades, but no response. So it's mostly connectivity of the sulfides. Like it's sulfides, but the grade is there. It's not like it's continuous. One thing is, if I didn't put a slide here, like if you go like 500-600 down, there's gravity, the surface is down, and you see one pattern like kind of U shape, like all around, and then it's on the west side there is quite pretty big anomaly there. But and it's again, you have to drill at 600-700 meters of depth. Really have to target it. And what we've seen also, like we have the Shakespeare deposit was exposed to surface. On the north side, there is a little plate, but we did a good mapping. We see some evidence, like kind of quartz gabbro we've seen, and maybe something further to the north at depth could be another horizon, like for targeting.
We have a question from Scott, and he says, Creed Hill has some high-grade nickel copper PG intersections at depth, 4,000, 6,000 feet near Old Lockery Mine. Any thought on deep drilling at this time?
I don't think early on, but definitely at some point. Perhaps better for underground.
more low?
Yeah.
Yeah, long and the
But I know what they're talking about. There are some what look like really nice.
It's great potential. And the other thing is like those surface soils, like at depth, there's a lot of challenges like deviation of the soils to get to the target. So really, like for us, it's just close to surface. We start already drilling, quite a bit of excitement, start ramping down, get a depth, and then get right angle and just target the zones. And then we go.
I was going to say, initially at least, I think we see ramp access greenhouse, so we'll probably sort of stick above 2,500 feet for so long. Maybe some deeper platform hole.
Is anything other than workings accessible to water or?
And so they're all flooded. A lot of the historic infrastructure is probably the smaller, track line kind of stuff. I don't have a good feel for that. I don't know if Jason has any thoughts on that, but there may not be.
Yeah, at this point, it's to be determined.
Certainly, we could look at using maybe some of the raises and stuff. Yeah. I don't know whether there's
What about any of the Incopore available to acid for PGs, the stuff that wasn't acid?
not that I know of, but honestly, I don't know.
Yeah.
A lot of that would have been drilling during mining. So I suspect it was core acid. There's certainly a lot of data that we haven't gone through. So there's a lot of physics. We're only just
Already done a lot of work.
just
Prior to the acquisition stuff.
that's where our focus has been, just not really on the exploration side.
Any more questions?
Oh, at the Shakespeare mine, can you tell whether the pseudotaphylite is cutting the mineralized gravel or the gabbro is cutting the pseudotaphylite?
Yeah, there is a slight relief to see that on the section we drilled last year 2 holes, and those kind of game changers for us. And after that, this year we drilled some holes and start kind of falling like if you go to the next one, this one, yeah, right there. See, those are like so that section. Yeah.
Oh, wait.
Yeah. Wasn't me, it's technology, but you get used to it at the beginning. Okay, so no, but next
Almost.
one. Next.
Click twice.
Okay, that's good. Give it time.
Uh-oh.
But those you can see them on surface, like with the west peak, like even the first slide, like one of the first, maybe the third one probably.
It's still catching.
Okay.
Yeah.
There is on the surface you can see like those pseudotaphylite, 2 places that are very well exposed. When you see the pocket like just goes out, very fine grain, and then also you see that the texture of the pseudotaphylite, when you kind of see this looks like it'll be colder than what you see close to the subdivisional complex. It'll be kind of far distance from the hot spot. And then, but you see they are connected little pods up, like open up 1 meter size, and then just melted raw. That's close to the pit. And then go further to the west, there, like where I see those shelf holding, like dome, like they're not big, like, but small ones. It's not anticlines, but it's all dimension carried, and you have a dome little kind of pushing up. In this area is not phenomenal, like pseudotaphylite there. Those probably taking some pictures given at Laurentian University for students, like how it looks like in the rock, beautiful. And then that's why you get to the deposit now on the west side, like this area here that we drill those holes.
And they do cross-cut mineralization.
Yes, they do. Like that's gonna be see this one here. That's very good example here. So that's a mineralization here, coming like that here. Turn like very flat. Now pseudotaphylite coming steep here like that, go all across here. You got this hole. Now really to be 100% sure, maybe you have to put the hole right here to connect those, but we're pretty confident because 3 holes here, they got it all across. Like on the angle side of the mineralization underneath. So that's the latest event that happened in sector. And why I think this is very important to understand it as a plumbing system for a better grade, because right here right now, put all side of that, this is 0.5 ounce of precious metal, platinum like that, like, and if combined, then platinum, palladium, gold is 18.8 grams. And copper is 3 times the average grade of resources. So this is something, and all I'm getting like is no way that we can get this high, that high pressure metal just by self from disseminated sulfides. So this is the area where we see a lot of sub-tacolite. And on surface, you can see right here, like actually, that's yeah, that right there. That's a pit here, right here, this area here, beautiful exposed sub-tacolite, so that close to the deposit.
Well, I'm sure. Yeah, if you have time, stick around for some more discussion, and there's still food left, and yeah, check out the accounts from the up there.
We also
It's
have,
a bit of a different story. It's the gold, you know, part of the old people. Now it's magic. They're my heritage, actually. Yeah. No, we like gold too.
we also have a suggestion box, so if you guys have any suggestions for speakers you'd like to hear from, please drop that in so we can try to make that happen. And thank you for attending our first in-person meeting of 2020. And thank you for Magna Mining for sponsoring.
Yeah.